using a function in your program. A function procedure or a sub-procedure are separate pieces of code in your program. Uh, let's look at a function procedure. And in our example here, what we're going to do is we're going to say the double gross, let me do this. Let's say the double gross pay. What we're going to do is we're going to set that equal to, and now probably I better make this a comment because I'm going to build something. I'm going to make a function called, and let me call calc gross pay, and I'm going to send to that function the hours worked, which we pulled out of, let's see, where did we get those from? We got it from our list box, hours. And the second thing that we're going to send is this is going to be a double rate, of pay. Okay. Now, when I take this out of the comment, it's going to complain, I think. Do I have that already? No, I don't have that already. Good. And what's the error? It says calc gross pay is not declared. So let's create, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function which is a separate piece of code, and we can put it, okay, now here's our class, and inside of our class we have our event for clicking the button. We have an event for when the form loads, it does this. We've got a code for our exit button. Okay, and then we've got our event for, take out some of the white space, and then we've got our event for text changed. Okay, so let's make our own private sub-procedure, but this one's going to be a little bit different, and we can put it anywhere. How about if we put it at the end here? Each one of these are separate. They don't know that the other sub-procedures exist until you communicate with them in some way. So this sub-procedure has no idea that this sub-procedure is there, and this sub-procedure has no idea that the other sub-procedures are there. So what we have to do is we have to communicate with them, and the way that we do that is by sending them these little pieces of data. So there is no calc gross pay yet, so, and is that 1s or 2? It should be 2. Calc gross pay. Alright. So let's go ahead and make our function. And I'm going to put it down here. You notice I'm putting it before the end of the class, but outside of any other sub-procedure. So I'm putting it, I'll put it right here. Put a blank space, and oh my goodness, I gotta type the code. How about if I get a little help with this by going back up here and copying this. Copy that, Control C, and then I'll come back down here and I'll say private, function, and then calc gross pay. So that's, but I need to say what type of variables these are going to be, and how I'm passing the information. Now, by value just means I make a double hours worked as, oops, so by value, and I'm having a terrible time trying to type this. Let me start over. Double hours space as, and this is going to be a data type of double, and this one is we're going to pass C by value, double rate of pay as a double. So by value, double rate of pay, and let's see, oops, as, and this one is going to be a double also. Okay. So the, and since this is the beginning of it, I need to have the end of it, end of the function. Okay, now what is it not? Requires all function property and other decorations to have as clause. Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be, and let me put this on the end of this, and as double. Now, what this is going to do is, no, what's wrong? Okay, we've got that already. What this is going to do is that this function is going to return a value. So with every function, there's always going to be one value which is returned. And so I can put my return statement somewhere in here. Oops. And I know that I'm going to return something. I just don't know what it is yet. Okay. Let me put this in again. As double, right? Okay. Is that alright? Okay. I think it's happy now. Okay. So a private function, which means it's going to have one return value, or a return. You can have several returns, but it only returns one value when you go to this. And then the values which you are being passed to it. Now if I can go back up here, can I get both of them in at the same? Let's see if I can get both of them in at the same time. Okay, well, not quite. Here, we'll be calling it, we'll be saying, go to that function and take these two values, send these two values to that function. Double hours worked, and that's going to be that one, and a double rate of pay, which is coming out of the combo box and the list box. So those two values, they're being converted into doubles, and then we're passing them to this function. So it will jump down to this function, and here's where we will have, and it will pass them in, and I left the name the same on these. you can have a different name if you want to, because according to the computer, since you passed a copy of these values uh, here and here, you can really have different names if you want to. So you want to put a different name on here. Let's use a different name. Double rate. How's that? Okay. Okay. So now that it's jumped to this function, what calculations do we want to do in here? Well, I don't want to type this, so let me go see if I can find the code. Let me pause. And here. Okay. So here's the code. It's going to jump down here. It's going to pass in these two values. And here we're going to create our own variable within this particular function. So the scope of this variable, it's a double called gross. So the scope of this variable here is just going to be seen within this function. None of these other sub-procedures will be able to see this variable called double gross. You could go into any other of these sub-procedures and create your own dim double gross as integer or string or whatever, and it would not have any clue that it was also down here. So the scope of this variable is just within this function. Okay, that a little bit on scope. Okay, so we create this variable called double gross, and then we take these two values that were passed in, the number of hours and the rate, multiply them together and save them into gross, and then we test to see if the number of hours is greater than 40. So if someone worked 42 hours that week, then we take the gross pay plus that number of hours minus 40, so say they work 2 hours overtime, times a double rate divided by 2. And we don't want to divide it by 2. Let's give them a good, for working overtime, let's give them a good rate. Okay. And then that variable we're going to return, and once it's done, once it hits the end of this function, it's going to jump back up to where it was called, which is right here, and it's going to replace this whole statement with whatever that value was. Does that make sense? Yeah, let's try it and see. Let's go ahead and debug and run and see if it works. First, let's build it, see if there's any obvious errors in it. Okay. We're living good. Okay. So debug, start debugging. And say we're worked 41 hours. A rate of $10, and our gross pay is, oops, got an error. Let's see what that is. Let's see what we didn't do. Okay, so we go call that, it comes back, and we don't display it anywhere after it comes back. So how about if we do this? How about if we find that label, and the name of the label was label gross apparently, and change the text and set it equal to the double gross pay, which is that variable, right? But since that's a double, I want to convert it into a string before I put it into a text field. So let's convert it into a string, and then let's format it for currency. Oops. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we ready to try this? Let's put in, there's our function. But if we put in a stopping point right here. Okay, now let's go debug. Debug, start debugging. And the number of hours, whatever we want the number of hours to be, 44. And whatever the pay rate is. And now we go to calculate, and let me see that. Yeah. Okay, so here we have it. Here's what's happened so far is that we, when it first loaded, where's the form load? Form load is right here. When the form first loaded, it came in and took the this list box, and with a loop, it filled it full of values. So 0.5 to 50, step by 0.5, it added all of these values into our list box. And then it went to the combo box and it added these values in a loop. Over and over again, it added all these values into our combo box. And then it selected the defaults. It said the default selection is 40 hours, and on the combo box the index is 0, which is the very first position, right? Okay, so that's what it did first. When it loaded the form, it filled all those up. And then the form was running and looked like that. And then we clicked the calculate button. So let's see what happened when we click the calculate button. When we clicked the calculate button, it created these variables. It took that selected, you remember that the 40 was selected in the list box? Well, it took that value and converted it, or try-parsed it, into a double. So it took that value, which is a text value, a string value, and it converted it into a double. So it converted it into double hours worked, which is 44. I know you probably can't see that, but it says 44 hours there. And then it took the value from the combo box, which is a string, and it needs to convert it into a number so you can multiply, add, divide, and all that. So it converted it into a double. So it try-parsed it into a double. And that one, we selected 8.5 from the combo box. And then it hit this statement, whereas where we put our breakpoint at. And here, we're going to, let's see where it goes from here. Let me step through this, debug, and step into function key 11. You notice how it jumped down to the private function from there? Okay, it was right up here. It said go to the calc gross pay function and send these two values, and let me click on that, which is double hours worked and double rate of pay. Send those two values down to our function. So now in our function, double hours is 44 and double rate is 8.5. Those are the two values that we selected in our list box and our combo box, right? And it's sending those down to this function. So in here we created our own variable called double gross, and we took those two values, 44 and 8.5, multiplied them together and stored them into double gross. Now, if there was more than 40 hours, and there were 44 hours, so 44 minus 40 is 4. So which one of these is this going to do first? Addition, subtraction, or multiplication? Well, it's going to do whatever's in parentheses first, and then it's going to do multiplication second, so 4 times the double rate, and then it's going to add that to the double gross. Okay. Okay. And let's see. Now it hasn't gotten there yet because we haven't. Let me go ahead and step into this. Double gross is 0. Let me press it one more time. You notice we're about to calculate that. And now double gross is 374. Hard for me to read. Okay. And since the number of hours is greater than 40, and F11, and it goes to the next line and it does this calculation. Now let's see what it's going to return. It's going to return 408. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to step into that, and that's the end of the function, so it's going to return right back up here. And now double gross pay is 408. So what it did, it went and did that calculation, returned the value from that function and stored it in here, and now that double value is going to be converted into a string, and that way we can display it on the label. And that's the end of the story. Okay, it works.